Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Keep calm. Stay local. Luke Jones, welcome in. Going to be talking to a lot of friends and people in my life and business owners here during the week, and we're going to swap the programming around. Some folks think that maybe I was prescient doing this Baltimore Positive thing before it sort of caught on. It has really been quite a time here, and you and I have been departed now for a couple weeks. There's not going to be any Ravens workouts. There's not going to be any Liars Luncheon. Maybe they'll do the Liars Luncheon on Zoom or something. I'm not sure. But sports has left us for a week. I will be talking to everyone this week about their business and their livelihood. And your livelihood is my livelihood. It's our livelihood. It says, well, it used to say sports here, right? Now it says positive and keep calm and stay local. But sports is gone, dude, and I think it is amazing when you're in the Walmart at 7:30 in the morning, as I was in Arbutus, stocking up on, things. I'd love to say right now the Terps had made it to the Sweet 16, and we're going to the Garden this week, and I'm going to take you to my favorite Korean ice place, and But that's not where we are, dude. And it really does give you a pause all the way around to say, oh, this is what it's like when they take the old Pearl Jam concert away on Saturday night, huh?
It's different. I mean, it really is, especially someone like me who does this for a living, who before I did it for a living still consumed it. It's there every single night. Your favorite sports, your not-so-favorite sports, stuff you just put on in the background, and it's strange. Over the weekend, I found myself watching on YouTube the 1996 Division Series Orioles-Indians. I've been watching classic NCAA tournament games. I mean, it's strange. I mean, you have it on, and there's some sense of comfort that you get from that.
I'm trying to think of any sporting event I really would like to sit and watch for 3 hours. Like literally, if there's anything left in my life that's not a Ric Flair or a Dusty Rhodes interview, you know what I mean? And I'm not really a Roddy Piper guy. I'm more old school in the wrestling stuff. And I've gone back to now some old Journey concerts and some Rush bootlegs, and I'm sharing music stuff and videos. My wife and I got in a car, made a playlist of songs, and I'll read those off to you because why not? I mean, what the hell else are we going to do here, right? But it really, I can't think that I really need to watch the whole Christian Laettner game again. You know what I mean? Like, I've thought about this over the weekend. I thought, I've seen the Ravens Super Bowl 35 game a million times. I have not watched Super Bowl 47 again. I haven't watched it, since the year that I wrote the book when I watched it a lot, right? But I haven't watched that in 7 years. So have at it. What do you want to watch? Is there anything in the world you haven't seen that you need, some Starrcade or WrestleMania 3 or something? No?
I mean, there's always stuff on WWE Network. You know me. I'm a big pro wrestling fan, and, I mean, pro wrestling's one of the few entities that's kind of, sort of, in some weird, strange, empty arena way that's still going on now. But as far as classic stuff, WWE Network has an unbelievable archive, and sometimes I'll just, it's almost like any streaming music service where you just have the feeling lucky kind of button and something random comes up.
I'm surprised how many like old Capitol Center concerts I can watch, right, that I was at, right? And I would think for wrestling, if your dad took you to the match in 2002 and you're now, you know what I mean, like the night that I did the Raw, I'm sure that the video of whatever the matches were that night with the sock and Mick Foley and whatever, like you can find all that, right?
Yeah, you can find that.
I can find Steve Austin in the Baltimore Arena doing Steve Weisers. I can do all that.
Is anything that was TV in any capacity, and some mega house shows, things like that, you'll find that.
I can watch Ivan Putski do a house show from '78 with the Polish Hammer on some jabroni. I can do that.
Right. But what I found interesting, and we're all trying to find ways to escape. I mean, I don't know about you. I can't watch CNN 12 hours a day. Like, I'll just drive myself completely crazy. I'll watch it, and I'm certainly watching plenty of news, much more than I have in quite some time. But you need that escape. And what I kind of like from a classic sports viewing is finding something that I'm familiar enough with to have a little bit of interest in it, but I'm not so familiar with it that I remember every detail. I recall every single pitch or every single shot, and I put it on. And look, I don't consume it in the same way that I do when I'm watching a Ravens game on a Sunday, when I'm watching, the Orioles when they were in contention 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But it's on in the background, and it's something that it gives you that reminder of normalcy that we just don't have right now. And we talked about this last week. I mean, me not even being, I'm not a hockey guy. I'd love to have a hockey game on that is going on right now.
Dude, go back and pick up the 99 Sabres Stars at Game 1 and just watch that. And the one nice thing, and look, it's a very tiny little gesture, but the major league sports, NFL Network's offering free Game Pass right now. NBA League Pass is free right now, and I was watching a 1993 Bulls Phoenix Suns game last week for a little while. MLB TV, they're offering that free right now. So there's archived content out there. It's not the same, but if you're someone who's really missing sports, there's content out there. There are complete games on YouTube. So I found myself watching some of that stuff again. Not in the same way that I normally do, but even just having it on in the background while I'm writing something related to Ravens free agency, or I've started a working list of the top 25 Ravens moments, regular season history that I think to look for at WNST.net at some point here in the coming weeks. Well, it feels like an exhale, right? I mean, I think of every exhale in my life, and I know we talked about this last week when my wife was sick, or when you have a change of a job or a change of life, or you graduate from college, or, those times where you're like, I better make a list. I better figure out what I should be working on today. What am I going to do when I wake up tomorrow morning? What's the first thing I need to do? And I've always sort of lived my life that way. Maybe it's having a pregnant girlfriend when I was 15, or, I don't know, kind of being one of those guys. I skipped a grade when I was a kid. So, I was always sort of looking for the next thing. So this is an interesting exercise, I think, for people who are, as Sig Mejdal would say, growth mindset, right? What are the things you would always want to do if you had time? What are the books you wanted to read? And you said something that's fascinating about wrestling videos and different stuff in any genre. Whether I want to go back and see a wrestling match or see a concert or watch a movie that I've already watched, that I might be familiar with, or want to go back, or do I want to watch Animal House for the 58th time, or do I want to binge watch some series I've never seen before? But it really does come down to, do I want something familiar or not familiar, right? Because we all have that ability right now to watch anything we want to watch, anywhere, anytime, listen to anything, view anything, and we have this amazing ability to do that. Back when I remember you had to get a VCR to watch an old James Bond movie, right? And then go buy the videotape for $59.99 or whatever it was. You're a little young to remember that, but I remember that era. Now it's we have all of this time on our hands, and people need to figure out how to use it constructively without finding themselves on a ventilator in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, or just worrying yourself sick about yourself, about your family, about your friends. That's all there. We all acknowledge that's there, and that's not something that's subsiding at any point here in the near future.
And it's not something that's secondary. That's the first thing
sure.
for everybody. Anything else they're doing about sharing movies or music or thoughts or even politics to some degree, although that's important right now, and we'll get to that. Whatever you're doing with your time right now is the most valuable thing you can do, whether it's with your loved ones in your house, planning for the future, preparing, that being the deer in the headlights, rolling out CNN or, God forbid, Fox News all day, that it will eat you up. I'm lucky my wife's got a routine and works, and I have a routine, and I sit here and do this, and I'm very inspired by all of this, but I do know how frightening it is, and I see that, and I think as a society, we're really going to have to come to grips with 30% unemployment in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
and I think, and look, I'm not a psychology expert or anything like that. I'm a human being just like anyone else. I think that's where we all need to find balance in terms of inevitably, yes, you're going to watch the news. And yes, you need to stay plugged in to know and to follow our local leaders, especially, whether you're talking county, whether you're talking state. I mean, that's really what's important to be plugged in with. But I think at the same time, we all need to find those means to escape. And when we're talking specifically as sports fans, you don't have that in the same way. But to your point, I mentioned WWE Network for pro wrestling, but anyone who, everyone's familiar with YouTube, but boy, if you want to find old Orioles games, old Ravens games, you can find stuff.
Old footage of downtown Baltimore on video, everything's there. Sure.
I found a couple news broadcasts from the very first Ravens game, Ravens-Raiders, September 1st, 1996. There was a Fox 45 package that I randomly found that you see people selling peanuts and parking.
Now you know how I felt when I found the Ray Lewis audio from the night after that game, right? Like, that was a holy grail. You find it, and you're like, this 5 minutes with Jerry Turner and Al Sanders would be phenomenal for me,
Yeah, but there's just, there's a sports time capsule out there, and it's something that, look, I'm not saying everyone wants to spend hours doing that, but if you need to escape for a little while,
if you want to go spend an hour with Johnny Unitas, you can go do that. He's there, right?
There's some cool stuff, and there are games that feel random. There are games that don't necessarily have great historical significance. But as I mentioned,
I've seen them all on Masson.
but it's funny you mentioned that, because I think it was last Thursday or Friday. There was an Orioles-Rays game on from 2014. It was an extra inning game. Nelson Cruz hit 2 homers, drove in 7 runs. This was on the Orioles. They were about a week away from clinching the AL East that year. But what was funny about that, I believe that was the same day as the Ravens season opener. I think it was September 7th. That was the day before the Ray Rice stuff came out with TMZ and dramatically changed everything about that situation. But what was interesting about that game, and again, I had it on in the background while I was chasing Ravens free agent news and writing about the defensive line, but there were details about that game that, since I had never watched it live, it was just on in the background. And that's where, again, sports fans not having any live sports right now, you can put on a game, and guess what? You can fall asleep watching a baseball game in the way that you do on a Sunday afternoon in June. When you're just lounging around the house after a long work week. So I think there's so much stuff out there that is either legendary content or just run-of-the-mill pedestrian kind of stuff that you either forgot about or never really had any memory of to begin with. That I've found it to be, personally anyway, comforting to have some of that stuff, because, like I said, even if it's just something you have on in the background, volume turned down, working from home. So many of us are working from home, many of us adjusting to that for the first time in a long-term sense, that there are, like you mentioned, there's old concerts. I think there's a lot out there that people that are, you don't have to be a technology expert or a computer expert to figure it out. I have a big screen TV with a Roku. Download the YouTube app and you search Orioles or Ravens, and
it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what kind of stuff comes up there, let alone concerts and all kinds of different.
Something I would watch, and I saw it popped up on my YouTube, and so randomly, like when I was a little boy, the first World Series I sort of remember was the Reds and the A's, 72, and then 73, Rusty Staub, 74, 73, 74, in that era. And one of the games popped up with Pete Rose and the trash incident. And I'm thinking to myself, my dad took me to like a Catfish Hunter Jim Palmer game that was an hour and 47 minutes long, and I saw the box score for it. I wonder if that's there. I guess it would be, or remnants of it, or highlights from it. But I was at that game, and they announced the crowd like 24,000 people or whatever. And so, like, a game like that, maybe, to see how the broadcast is, maybe, because I don't really remember the outcome of a game. I think there was a 1-0 game or whatever, or where the action happened in the game. But I'm thinking like a baseball game, it would be something like that, or maybe like a 1966 World Series game. And I know they've colorized all that and brought that back to life with Kirk Gowdy or whoever. Chuck Thompson called the game. I remember a few years ago that was running around. Super Bowl I, they colorized the 58 championship game. So there's certainly some of those sort of Wizard of Oz sort of filmy things that are out there that most people have never seen, right? Like, I've never sat and watched Super Bowl III, and I know they made like a whole film, cutting in parts where, Bubba Smith talked about parts of the game, or I'm making that part up, but people in the game talked about the game. Those are interesting. And then, look, man, aside from all of that sports stuff, there's a million NFL films, interviews with John Stedman and Don Shula and John Madden and Steve Sable and all of that sort of archival stuff that isn't a wrestling match that you've already seen or a game you've already seen, but like a deep dive in on conversations. And, I tell people this all the time. Over the last 6 years, most of the content I've done, whether it's timely or not, there is some retrospective stuff in everything I've done. So when I run our audio of stories, when you and I sit with people at the Super Bowl, the stories of Rod Carew talking about his life being saved and different stuff that's out there, all of those stories exist in a million different places with a million different interviewers and old videos of interviews and storytelling. And when you consider that I haven't sat and watched the NFL Life Series, Football Life Series, that kind of stuff, even last year, the 100th anniversary NFL, all these interviews and stuff that they've done, I haven't really sat and watched Dion talking to Lawrence Taylor, but that's compelling stuff. More compelling to me than watching the 1998 Orange Bowl again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's fair. And believe me, I can tell you right now what you just said. Check out some of the football. And look, not every single Football Life is a home run, but boy, I've watched a lot of them over the years.
Well, the 30 for 30s are all unbelievable, and I've only seen 10 of them. There's 40 I haven't seen because I just haven't had 2 hours to give to O.J. Simpson or whatever the hell it was. You know what I mean, right?
Right. And specifically with football, and as I mentioned, NFL Game Pass right now is free for anyone. You just have to have an NFL.com account, and you'll get some spam emails from time to time, but nothing too bad. But they have all that NFL, all those different specials, the America's Game that they've done on the Super Bowl champion every year. There's a lot of that stuff. And look, I haven't watched all of it either, but we all only have so much disposable time, leisure time, where we're not working or spending time with our family or going to games as we did in the past. But now there is some of that. And especially, a father and a son, a father and a daughter, a mother and a son, anyone in your, anyone in their immediate family who likes sports, check some of that stuff out. There's some really interesting stuff, and you can find some of it on the internet, but NFL Game Pass, you can go back and find the first season of Hard Knocks with Brian Billick and Tony Siragusa and Shannon Sharp.
There you go. Get Coach Billick. By the way, did you see Coach Billick propping the grandkid up last week?
I didn't see it, but
you got to see it. No. His grandson, who I've met him when he was this big. Right now, he's like a little human. He's like a little 7 or 8 year old, and he's a little Billick, right? Like, Dad went to Northwestern and played tight end. Mom's Billick's kid. And she's an executive, and like all of this stuff. And I've never met the kid, and the first exposure to the kid, he sits up on Grandpop's lap, and I've never seen Brian smile bigger. Not even when I took him the fake Lombardi trophy that he has behind him on the set. And it was the day the Brady thing happened, and he brought his grandson, and everyone should watch this. And his grandson gave some feedback on whether Tom Brady was going to get the Buccaneers to the playoffs, and his favorite team's the Browns. So this was, it was very, very incongruent, and Brian was beside himself. But the kid was very, very well-spoken, and it really felt like he was going to be an offensive coordinator at some point. It really did. If you take a look at this
great.
Kid, yes.
And look, those are the little things that people right now, we need that stuff more than ever.
Remember 5 years ago when the CNN guy, the kid broke in on the report, and it became like the biggest. Now everyone's bringing their kid up on their lap. I mean, my wife watches morning television. Every anchor's at home. Every anchor has their kid on the show. That's where we are, because that's what we need right now, right? We need that.
Sure. I mean, and another sports tie-in, I didn't see clips of it, but I know that it was happening. Joe Buck was literally providing some play-by-play for people's viral videos around the house and stuff like that. I mean, it's, as scary as this thing is, and as much unknown as there is that sense of community that we don't have in a physical sense right now, but through social media, through Facebook. And look, I mean, we have to filter stuff. I mean, I understand that, and there's plenty of toxicity on social media, but there's a lot of great stuff too. And I've seen friends having virtual wine chats and getting together with their families online, with Skype or FaceTime. I mean,
well, we were supposed to fly to Europe this week for a wedding, right?
Yeah.
So, and now Germany's under shutdown. So, I mean, for people who've weddings, right? I mean, graduations. I mean, I get all that, but like a wedding, and and the thing we're trying to avoid here, underneath all of this little sports talk that Luke and I are doing, is funerals, right? And watching this process in Italy, I have two very good friends of mine. One is in her early 30s. The other is my age-ish and have children, and they live in northern Italy, and they're on my Facebook every day. And so this is not something I'm witnessing on Twitter and seeing the people singing out the windows in Venice. I've seen that too. But this is like, how do I put on a mask and go to the grocery store and get back home in an hour and have enough for 10 days and make sure that we have what we need, and stay safe? Yeah,
and I mean, those are very real factors. I mean, I can say personally, in fact, I was talking about this with my immediate family over the weekend, that, I mean, I have plenty of food in my house. It's not an issue right now whatsoever.
You have toilet paper.
Yeah, I have good. Yeah. I have enough toilet paper, but I have canned goods and non-perishables and things. I could be fine here for a good while at least. But it's funny. I found myself personally, and look, I mean, once football season comes to an end until baseball season, I mean, you know this, I'm home a lot more regularly than I am during baseball season or during football season. But I've found myself over the last week to 10 days, since I've really been social distancing big time, that I found my body almost going into survival mode a little bit more, that I find myself, I'm not snacking nearly as much. I'm eating my meals. Like, it's not as though I'm starving myself or rationing, but I feel as though my body's almost gone into a survival mode, or at least feeling that way, that I haven't been eating as much, which is a good thing.
By the way, man, I've spent so much time with you in like press boxes and stuff, sitting next to you, that I have seen you literally feed yourself and type and feel like you're just eating and you don't even know you're eating.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to do, right? I mean, especially when you have time and you're not on the move. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the big challenges for however long people are cooped up, is to be active.
Well, I'm going to write the great American novel, Jones. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think we all are, right? I mean, but I just, it's definitely different in that way. But I mean, I don't mind. I'm someone who doesn't mind being at home, but the idea of, one, being told to stay home, and two, there not being a whole lot to go out and do, even if you want. That's why I've kind of been, I guess, content to be at home for the time being, but it's different. I mean, it's definitely a different feeling in that way, and I think where I feel blessed compared to I mean, people that are in tightly confined quarters in cities and apartment complexes, and we've seen Italy and what's happening in our own major metropolitan areas right now. I mean, I'm blessed that I have a nice big backyard that I can go and I mean, Friday afternoon I just walked around in my backyard for a while, picked up some sticks from trees, and getting ready. Mowing season's going to be beginning soon. And
man's getting to know his land, is what he
yeah,
said.
but I think those are the little things that we don't think about and we don't talk about.
This is a timeout, man, and
it is.
And I know you're a spiritual sort, and this is just a timeout.
Church Sunday morning was listening to my pastor, our organist, our sound guy, and our choir director basically had our church service. They recorded it, I believe, on Saturday, and it was on the church website on Sunday morning,
wow.
An hour and 10 minutes, and I sat on my couch, drank coffee, and I listened to the church service.
Beautiful.
Nothing.
Well, I'm thinking about
special.
things that people can still do. Like, this is what I do. This is what we do. As long as the phones work and the Russians don't pull down the grid or the Chinese don't pull down the grid at this point. By the way, I have toilet paper. Just I'm gonna make toilet paper part of what we do here on the set, just to let everybody know that we're good here. We'll spare a square for everybody. But, we went for a walk the other night, and we went for a ride on Sunday, and I would say this, and I guess I'll be talking to business people all week about this, and, it feels certainly like everything's going to be shut down, if not by the time you hear this soon thereafter, and, we are going to be into a full Italian Chinese lockdown. What's been going on over there is now what's going to happen here, and what's happening in Chicago and New York becomes what happens here this week or next week, and hopefully our hospitals can handle all this. But staying away from people, Luke, it is I've had a mixed bag with people in my time, as you're well aware. All you got to do is see my timeline, right? And friends, enemies, frenemies, all that stuff. But I like people, right? And generally people like me, and that's been the story of my life, is collecting people. And you feel that at the Super Bowl, and we spend a whole week together with people from all walks of life, and there's warm embrace. And you don't know me to be a hugger, but I am a hugger. I stopped being a hugger when my wife got cancer. And my wife and I are kind of built for this, right? Like, we have gloves around the house. We have a couple of masks lying around. I'm a fist bumper, as you know. I probably haven't hugged you in 6 years, even though I would kind of want to, because I'm a hugger, and I was always a hugger. But I stopped because of the germ thing and bringing germs home to my wife, and I had to change my life 6 years ago this week. And for a lot of people, I went to the Walmart on Friday morning, and a dude coughed in line 15 feet behind me, and the glares and the stares and the eyeballs, and this guy clearly didn't have an effing clue, right? Like, he's out of the store, he kind of knows sort of why, he's kind of annoyed that he's there, everybody's kind of annoyed they're there. There's a lot of that going on, and the bunkering down and staying home. Hopefully there will be no disagreements. There'll be no bar fights, right? Because of this, right? So, there'll be no late night anything, and hopefully restoring order and keeping people in. Did you see what it did to the air quality in China, in Italy? Did you see the video of that? You should go check that out. It's amazing. But the weird part of social distancing as I saw it, and I lived this way when my wife was sick, when she's walking around with a mask on and bald, is that people tend to avoid you when you're like that. But trying to avoid people and looking at them like, okay, you're going to go left and I'm going to go right. It's almost like driving, but people are way more looking at each other's eyes or bodies to stay socially distanced, right? Like, if you're focused on it, and we're going to all become more focused on it, then when you're walking through the supermarket, you're not just going to dive in on the meat counter. And I saw much more of this over the last 5 days, that it's harder to do, because I am much more inclined to make eye contact and say good morning, or how are you,
Sure.
or good day, or have a nice day, or how you feeling, because that's my jam. And like Brian Baldinger's that way. Coach Billicks that way. Coach Billick never walks in a room without greeting people, ever. He finds it impossible to walk in a room being silent. And I think it's much more... The weirdest part of this is going to be the mistrust and the distance we put between each other and loved ones physically. That's going to be so strange, because I walked 5 miles through the city on Friday night, and I felt it in every interaction, going across every bridge, every sidewalk, and we don't even all have masks on yet. That's coming next week.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I even think about the lingering impact of that when we do return to some semblance of normalcy, whenever that is. And
yeah, when are we allowed to hug again, right?
Yeah, I mean, when is a handshake not going to be viewed as? I mean, I couldn't tell you in the last 10 days. I mean, I've really social distanced, but I've seen my sister, I've seen my brother-in-law, I've seen my mom. My brother lives with me. How many times I've gone to handshake my brother-in-law. He's one of my best friends, and how we've had to stop ourselves. And it's good. We shouldn't be shaking hands right now, but the times I've gone to hug my mom, it's like, no, shouldn't do that. I want to keep her healthy and everything. But that sense that I think we're all going to feel once we are on the back end of this thing, whenever that might be, to become, quote, normal again, and what that looks like. And look, we should all, be, this idea of washing our hands more frequently, that should continue. We should all be more judicious about our touching one another, and certainly coughing into your elbow compared to coughing on the person in front of you in a line at a grocery store. I mean, I think there are certainly lessons like that I hope carry on, but in terms of just when we're all going to feel comfortable again, I mean, I
just hope we get Japanese toilets. I mean, that's really what I want. I mean, if we're going to clean this place up, we need Japanese toilets and a bidet is what I was
just going to say. The bidet industry has to be licking their chops with this toilet paper shortage. But
one button, man. One button. We got electronic everything. You could put it on an app. You wouldn't even have to touch the toilet. You just sync it up and say, what do I want? Small, medium, large, lots of water, sprinkles. I mean, I'm telling you, the Japanese toilet, Luke, Google this. I'm telling you. All right?
Yeah, but it's definitely, I mean, there's going to be, and I think we've all used this comparison, not that it's the exact same thing, but we've all talked about the impact of 9/11 and what that meant post 9/11. I mean, we've all experienced it going to games, going to concerts. I mean, heck, the media party at the Super Bowl this past year. You went through an X-ray machine and a metal detector just to go to that, where it's just media there. I'm curious. I'll be very curious and fascinated and interested to see what our world, what society looks like post-coronavirus, post-COVID-19, as far as interactions. And, I mean, do we become a much more distant society in that way, even with just our face-to-face daily interactions? I mean, part of me thinks that might be true, but part of me hopes that that's not the complete case, because I think we need to keep what makes us human and what makes us able to relate to one another. And as much as we can't do that in a physical sense right now, social media and FaceTime and things like that are great, but it's not the same true kind of human interaction. So it's going to be very interesting to see what that looks like on the other end of this, that I hope is sooner rather than later. But, I think anyone who reads about this, follows this, consumes news, looks at multiple outlets, multiple resources out there. There's just so much unknown to really know what that's going to look like, when it's going to be, how it's going to work, any of that. So it's definitely, in that way, it's very much uncharted territory. And I think everyone's just trying to take it day by day, a day at a time. And if you're working from home, get your work done and spend time with your immediate people that live within your household, and try to make the best of it, because it's certainly something we're not used to, that's for sure.
Luke Jones can be found Baltimore. Luke, he may be writing a little bit about the Ravens, maybe a little bit about life, maybe a little bit about baseball. If it ever comes back to normal, we'll be featuring him here as well as at the front of WNST.net, as always. And Don Moeller's going to be around a lot this week doing Baltimore Positive. I am going to be here chatting with Baltimore business owners and friends of ours and people in the community, the fabric that holds this thing together, that's held together, WNST, where we keep calm, stay local, try to remain Baltimore positive. I'm wearing my Proud to be Baltimore shirt. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Baltimore positive.